The letter arrived on a cold, rainy evening. Clara held the envelope in her hands, her fingers trembling as she traced the elegant, looping handwriting. It was addressed to her, but there was no return address. The paper smelled faintly of damp earth and something else, something metallic like blood. She opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of parchment. The message was short: "Clara, you are needed. Come to Hollow Creek. The old house awaits. Do not ignore this. E." Clara frowned. The only E she knew was her estranged Aunt Eleanor, who had vanished without a trace 10 years ago. The family had assumed she was dead. But this letter, it was recent. The ink was fresh, the paper crisp. Against her better judgment, Clara packed a bag and set out for Hollow Creek, a remote village nestled deep in the woods. She told herself it was curiosity, but deep down, she knew it was something more. A pull, a whisper in the back of her mind that she couldn't ignore. Hollow Creek was exactly as Clara had imagined, a forgotten place, shrouded in mist and silence. The villagers were few and far between, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. They watched her with suspicion as she passed, whispering to one another in a language she didn't understand. The old house stood at the edge of the village, a crumbling mansion surrounded by overgrown trees. Its windows were dark, and the front door hung slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. Clara hesitated at the gate, her heart pounding. Something about the house felt alive, as if it were watching her, waiting for her. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath her feet. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The walls were lined with portraits of people she didn't recognize, their eyes seeming to follow her as she moved. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing through the empty halls. There was no response. Clara explored the house room by room. Each one was more unsettling than the last. In the study, she found a journal belonging to her aunt. The entries were frantic, almost illegible, filled with warnings about the hollow and the whispers. "They speak to me," one entry read. "They tell me things, terrible things. I can't escape them. The hollow is growing stronger." Clara's skin prickled. She was about to close the journal when she heard it, a faint whisper, so soft she thought she might have imagined it. But then it came again, louder this time, a voice murmuring just behind her ear. "Clara!" She spun around, but there was no one there. The room was empty. Her breath quickened as the whispers grew louder, filling the air around her. They were coming from the walls, the floor, the very fabric of the house. "You shouldn't have come. The hollow is hungry. It's too late for you." Clara stumbled back, her heart racing. She ran from the room, the whispers chasing her down the hall. She didn't stop until she reached the front door, but when she tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. It was locked, or something was holding it shut. Trapped in the house, Clara searched for another way out. In the basement, she found a hidden door concealed behind a stack of old crates. It led to a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air grew colder as she descended, the whispers growing louder. At the bottom of the stairs, she found a small circular room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. In the center of the room was a pit, a deep black hole that seemed to go on forever. Clara approached the edge, peering into the abyss. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices speaking in unison. "Join us! Become one with the hollow." She felt a pull, an invisible force drawing her closer to the edge. She tried to resist, but it was too strong. Her feet moved on their own, carrying her toward the pit. Just as she was about to fall, a hand grabbed her arm, yanking her back. Clara screamed, turning to see a figure standing beside her, a woman with wild, unkempt hair and hollow eyes. "Aunt Eleanor?" Clara whispered. The woman nodded, her grip tightening. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice hoarse. "The hollow, it's too powerful. It feeds on fear, on despair. It's been calling to you, just like it called to me." Eleanor explained that the hollow was an ancient entity trapped beneath the house. It had been summoned centuries ago by a group of villagers who sought its power, but they had lost control. The hollow had consumed them, and now it hungered for more. The only way to stop it is to perform the ritual, Eleanor said. But it requires a sacrifice. Clara's blood ran cold. What kind of sacrifice? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. A life. One of us must take its place in the pit to hold it back. Clara shook her head. No, there has to be another way. But Eleanor was already moving toward the pit. I've been fighting it for years, she said. I'm tired, Clara. Let me do this. Let me protect you. Before Clara could stop her, Eleanor stepped into the pit, her body disappearing into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, and then silence. The house seemed to exhale, the tension lifting. The whispers were gone. Clara ran from the basement, her mind reeling. She didn't stop until she was outside, the cold night air filling her lungs. The house stood silent behind her, its windows dark and lifeless. She returned to the village, but the villagers were gone. The streets were empty, the houses abandoned. It was as if Hollow Creek had never existed. Clara left the village and never looked back. But even now, years later, she can still hear the whispers. They're faint, almost imperceptible, but they're there, a constant reminder of the hollow and the price her aunt paid to save her. Clara thought she had escaped the hollow, but it never truly let her go. It lingers in the corners of her mind, a shadowy presence that grows stronger with each passing day. She knows it's only a matter of time before it calls her back, and when it does, she's not sure she'll be strong enough to resist.